Hello and welcome to the Echo Chamber podcast. My name is Tony Groves. Today I'm flying solo in Cork, and I have to tell you guys, I'm not looking to I don't think I'm going to get out of here alive. We're going to get straight into it. I'm delighted to be joined in the Tour de Shack on tour by freelance journalists from Village Magazine, the Corks Echo, Cork Club Music, the Evening Echo. Yeah, but I'm standing here now, guys, and I'm on Winthorpe Street, and I'm actually sitting in a cafe, and the people are circling around. It's like I'm like a little fish and surrounded by sharks. Podcaster with Red FM, Mike McGrath-Bryan. Mike, thank you so much for coming on the pod, mate.
Thanks a million for having me on, man. I've been a fan of the podcast since the really early going, since the Tour de Shack days.
I can remember actually very early on, I'd say it was about three episodes in, when we were still shouting at an iPad.
Yeah.
You got in touch and we were laughing because you were asking me, what are you using? I think I was using GarageBand at the time. and we literally were shouting at an iPad.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's gas because you've launched your own podcast then, Red on Red on Red FM.
Corks Red FM 104 to 106.
Yeah, but it's really, it goes to the heart of what you like to do.
Yeah.
You like to platform new acts. You like to talk about actual new Indigenous Irish music.
Yeah.
I think Indigenous is probably the wrong word, but certainly because I've heard some of it. It's kind of very eclectic.
Yeah. Well, with Red FM has historically had a great track record of supporting music in Cork, because obviously being the Cork pop station, you want to get where people are. But as time changes, obviously, I used to listen a lot to Red FM when I was a lot younger and my tastes were developing. The demographic moves along and Red FM has kind of moved along with a little bit to where now their specialty a lot is talk radio, among other things. And maybe about this time last year, I was in touch with their programming director, Dave Mack, because they have a segment on Drive Time called Local Legends. We talk about people that are doing things locally. And myself, I head up a series of local community talks called Cork Loves Music, where musicians can come along, they can talk about the issues that are affecting the local music community, and we'll have more talks to announce there for later on in the year. Follow Cork at Cork Loves Music on Twitter. And we started nattering away. It's like, we got these talks, I can record them. Do you want to put them on this digital network? Because Red are now developing their digital footprint a lot now with Red Business, and now they've got a YouTube and they're doing visual content like Cahoots' new series.
Yeah.
And it kind of developed from there into Red on Red, because they had Green on Red on Sunday nights, which is their Irish indie deal, where they had Black on Red, which was platforming a lot of Irish hip hop. So like, okay, let's do like an hour a week on the stuff that for one reason or another might not necessarily play well on radio, because obviously with radio a lot of it is familiarity,
but a lot of it's actually not even picked by bloody DJs these days. It's just there's a select group that say, well, this is we follow up the chart top 20 with the occasional 90s hit or whatever it is.
Well, like with Green on Red and with Black on Red, etc. Like with Black on Red, obviously with hip hop being in a bit of a commercial moment, it is kind of unavoidable. With Green on Red, there's generally kind of a thing of, well, here's your alt-wins and here's your code line, but also then in between that, here's your alternate and your percolator. Obviously, I can't speak for either of the producers because I'm not here, but that's generally the goal.
Yeah.
And with Red on Red, it's like, okay, Cork has a great community scene, and obviously with podcasting, we can play longer songs, we can play more eclectic stuff, but also because we're not restrained by commercial breaks, we can have longer chats, we can go more in-depth.
Yeah.
And it started off as a magazine show to where, we're going to talk about what gigs were on this weekend and all of this other stuff as well. But it got a little bit too clustered, a little bit too quickly. So we said, okay, let's dial back, let's focus on one event on a weekend or 2 weekends away. Let's talk to one of the people behind it and let's get their story. Let's have them platform their favourite Cork artists. And one of the big things for me was, there's an established canon of Irish rock that seems to have crystallised at about 2003.
Yeah.
And, a lot of discussion about Irish music tends to go around the good old days and nostalgia, simply because after that time, Irish music gets a lot less regularly platformed through bigger platforms, whether for commercial reasons or whatever. So our whole thing now is, let's interview people, let's hear their stories, and let's build up a backstory of the last 10 years in Cork music and the development of Cork music that leads on to today. Not for the purposes of living in the past, just, okay, a fantastic music scene has kind of built up here in Cork out of the wreck of the recession, and almost because of the recession rather than in spite of it.
Yeah. Well, people are always, you know, they always say that the flower, the daisy through concrete is where these things come from.
Exactly, and that's what I was only talking about there with Colin from the Altered Hours.
Yeah.
Where he was kind of recounting his experiences of like being able to walk through Cork and go, oh, there's a disused building here. Let's see who the landlord is and see can we turn it into a rehearsal space. And I did that 3 or 4 times. Obviously, you can't do that now because of urban renewal or whatever else. But again, that's a product of a time. And
I think that's also you've done the progression there already for me. You've talked about how we've gone from one level, and then we talk about I'm going to use the other word, gentrify. How then it, you know, we homogenize. You're talking about just purely, you know, the Cork scene.
Yeah.
You know, there's a vibrant underground scene, but if you want to go to the next level where it becomes commercially viable or commercially successful, the gatekeepers tend to want certain things that are homogenized and gentrified to a large degree. But I think we see it now in things like podcasts and things like alt media, where we're seeing this. You don't actually have to conform now. You can strike out and make your own way. You see a lot of people purely basing their income streams on Patreon models.
With the blind boy.
Yeah, absolutely. And huge credit to him. He just sold out hit a live...
You'd like to hear on Thursday with Tara Flynn.
I know, I was talking to Tara. She's delighted. So, you know... just you can't beat it, you know. You can't, and it's nice. It removes the gatekeepers.
It does.
And when you know someone who actually works as a day job as a middleman, I can tell you sometimes the middleman all he does is take his 10% off the top.
Yeah. Well, I mean, with Red, we've been very fortunate in that they've been incredibly supportive of anything that we've wanted to do because it's a podcast. Because they recognise the strengths of the podcast format, and they know that it's something that they're exploring. And it's not just been me. Obviously, Jonathan Healy from News Talk has been doing stuff with Red Business. They're having a couple of different other people from around Cork do different podcasts now, like Lockdown Models, the Ask Audrey calling from the Examiner. That's all kicking off in fairly short order. We're being given the opportunity to explore. We've been given the opportunity to do so, and I think it's that perfect balance that we have with Red between the frontier psychiatry of podcasts and the social media backing and the muscle locally and the goodwill locally too, because obviously with music there's a lot of tie-ins with people that might see being on a Red FM brand of podcast as being up from you know, the blogosphere or whatever else next.
Oh, it is. There's no doubt that the demarcation matters. These things matter to people, and if you can have some sort of you can raise people's profiles just by attaching that name, which is why it's actually a credit to what you guys are doing. It gives people a leg up. You know, we laughed when we started a podcast, and someone said, you know, next stop for someone is they'll get asked to go on a phone call, a call in chat show, you know, to give in and give out. So there are rungs to this, and that's what there are. But if you're giving people an in and a start, it can be profound because it lives there as well. It lives online, and it has. Martin likes to say that social media, social memory these days.
It is,
and it really is. Like there's you're giving people a resource to go back and say, what's the origins here? And that stuff's powerful, you know.
But I mean, what we set out to do something that would chart the progress of non-commercial music or non-mainstream friendly music. But there's a bit of a crossover now in that the Altered Hours and O Emperor, you know, there's a lot of scope for them to do much larger things while staying true to themselves, and that obviously people really love what they're doing, especially O Emperor with the whole crossovers that they have with, you know, with 70s classic rock and with Nigerian high life. But the most important thing as well is that people are forging that connection. Like, I've been getting messages now the last couple of weeks since the podcast kicked off. You know, just kind of the remark of, you know yourself on the podcast, great listen, you know, it's great to hear something that's different, but also, like, a guitarist got on to me as well that lives out in West Cork for different reasons he can't come into the city. And I was like, this is a social lifeline for me. I get to hear these stories, I get to be on, I get to listen to people's experiences, and I get invested. And that's the most important thing is like, you know, we're not going for commercial viability in terms of the sound, but people always react strongly to storytelling. And if we can tell the stories behind these artists, that's another way of forging a bond or forging an investment with an artist that you wouldn't necessarily get, that you wouldn't necessarily be able to put across in, very densely timed, very densely timed atmosphere, or maybe not necessarily be able to put across and explain an article either,
But like, if you're you write for, and you've written for a plethora of different magazines and newspapers. There's got to be the battle between the head and the heart. Okay, the head knows you have to, you have to. This is a job at the end of the day. And the heart goes, well, I love the music, and it's clear that you do love the music. You love the passion of it. Do you find that it's harder now than when you started, or are you finding your feet in platforming and balancing that between head and heart?
I want to say the heart's been winning, to be quite honest with you, because the way I got to start it was 2008 when I started writing properly. So it's been 10 years now this September, and I started off just as a local music feature writer for a now defunct website called dropd.ie. And I was just given free rein, to be quite honest with you, because nobody was making any money off it. It had been kind of national, but it had been kind of left behind a little bit by Niler 9 and Golden Fleck and all of this. There was a lad editing it by the name of Paddy Murphy, and he was kind of styled a lot after Hunter S. Thompson, but eventually he couldn't, couldn't keep it going anymore because he was over in Poland and he was starting a family. So I took over, and I took it down. I moved its editorial base to Cork because Dublin had websites. Cork didn't. And at the time, there was a lot of cool stuff happening in Cork that needed kind of trying to maybe give this, again, 6 months. The same plan as every kind of digital media person. Let's give it 6 months and see what happens.
Let's see how we go.
Yeah. And it kind of went from there to kind of knocking on what at the time was established specialist media. And I got breaks with Alternative Ulster magazine, which was the Nordy Hot Press.
Right.
And Molten magazine, which was to this day Ireland's only newsstand metal magazine. It lasted about 6 issues.
All right.
And other places, and a zine, a culture zine called One More Robot, which is run by current Irish Times regular Dean Van Nguyen.
Yeah.
So I was very lucky in that a lot of people kind of recognised, that they kind of recognised, I suppose somebody kind of recognised that I was looking to do shit and just looking to talk about music that I loved.
Well, ideally, I'm sitting here with you, and I can bloody see the passion that you want to do this, and that it matters. I find it, this is just my my pro Dublin bias, though. When it comes to it, you can point outside of literally. Dublin is kind of oblivious. I think I made a joke a couple of weeks ago where you saw the headline in the Echo a few weeks ago where it said "End Dublin Rain in Cork."
Oh, that's an old one in this neck of the woods. We've had that on electricity boxes.
But I've seen it. On the. But did you see that? This was after a Green Party and Cork County Council meeting, and it was the headline in the Echo. And I replied on Twitter and I said Cork, End Dublin rule in Cork, Dublin. Typical Nordies, let them stay up there.
Jesus.
because there is that attitude whereby people don't understand that genuinely there's so little disconnect, or there's so little awareness of outside of the pale as we get a kicking for. But the truth is when acts do go, they do tend to travel. Then they move to Dublin. Do you find that do you think in 5 years' time there'll be a thriving industry in Cork, or do you think it's...
I think Cork is booming in terms of there's been new media startups here, between journalism, between podcasting, but also, commercial video editing, animation and so forth. I was part of an animation company there that was kind of struggling along for about 2 years. Shout out to Godstar Film. And, we were in and out of negotiations the whole time with different places. And, not that there's an obliviousness, but rather there's making the case that little bit harder. Early on in my career, it wasn't Dublin Publications that I was getting start from. It was because I was such a big fan of the punk metalers Therapy, and that kind of was all over my social media, etc. I got my breaks with Alternative Ulster a lot quicker than I would have had with other places. And I suppose there's just kind of that second city mentality between Cork and Belfast that kind of made that a lot easier. But between the head and the heart, just to kind of round off and finish that point there, I found that the heart allowed me to do a lot with Alternative Ulster and then later the Thin Air, and now is allowing me to do a lot of stuff with Niler 9. But the heart, but the head doesn't have to do a whole bunch extra in that with the Echo. You know, they trust me to kind of bring them stories from Cork with stuff that wouldn't necessarily be on the radar for a whole bunch of other people, like metal stuff, certain kinds of hip hop, you know, improvisational drone, noise, etc. That I can take them a story and I can try and sell them on the, because it's all about storytelling. And try and sell someone on the interpersonal aspect. What's the human interest? Most of anything else. And again,
dare I say intersectionality as well?
There is. I mean, that's it. You see, intersectionality. By which do you mean gender intersectionality?
No, I mean, as in like you're talking about different types of hip hop and how when you have a real collision of cultures and countercultures and subcultures, which actually gives us some of this, because I've heard some of the stuff you play and some of the songs. I within the first 30 seconds, I think I know what genre it is, and then I'm lost it a minute later. You know,
I think that's just because Cork has always been its own beast. You go back as far back as the 1970s, where post-punk was a thing, and you had None Attacks, and you had Mean Features, and then eventually Micro Disney. And then Micro Disney became a thing of their own, and that begat the Sultans and the Frank and Walters. Cork always had its own thing, maybe because there wasn't that media spotlight on it historically. And I think that's just a continuation of what's happening now. Not because there's no media spotlight on it, but because it's inherent to Corkonians to create an infrastructure of equals and of supporters, etc., that kind of helps sustain everything. Like when we talk about Cork hip hop, the Cutting Heads Collective, that's a group of about 20 people that all work together to put on boom bap hip hop in the Poor Relation and in the Vic, but also do community stuff. Like they took over UCC campus there on Saturday to do a crossover event with some lads from Limerick and the Union Black hip hop crew that were in for the Cork Midsummer Festival. So there's all of these things whereby, the community vibe kind of extends both ways to where, okay, let's give someone from Limerick or Belfast a Cork gig, but also let's extend them, let's work with Cork Midsummer Festival, which has been a part of the Cork arts firmament forever. And even that boils down to now where there's a whole bunch more openness to work with the community in arts because people are seeing benefits of it.
The amount of actual things on in the last couple of weeks has just been phenomenal. Like I know I'm just dropped in and purely on the Midsummer Festival is on. But like there is such a crossover. There's these open picnics. There's the long table. There's plays. There's shows. There's things in the Cork Opera House nearly every night at the moment. There's a huge amount of events for people. A lot of it free. A lot of it actually subsidised by the state in effect. But like these sort of things. I don't know. I suppose we get into the bigger question there because I have this problem. I can never reconcile culture and I don't like the word nationalism too often because sometimes nationalism is stood and stuck. And where I believe culture is actually is fluid. Culture evolves and moves, and people go, "Oh, we need to protect Irish culture." And I go, "Yeah, no, but sorry, Irish culture needs to always evolve, and it just needs to. Yes, absolutely. There's certain things, we have to protect our knowledge and our history of it, knowing where it came from and its origins.
We also have to evolve it in response to changing circumstances, and I mean, like, you look at Irish hip hop specifically as an example of what the new Irish can do, and I even hate the term New Irish, but in terms of what a new and changing Ireland looks like culturally, Rusangano family heading away with the Choice Music Prize, that blew my mind. But you're seeing that crossover, and I mean, I know a lot of people are purists, and I'd say a lot of people are protect Irish culture. We all know what that
point of view of culture. And, we're more diverse now. we have the paradox of how Ireland was and how Ireland is becoming, and I see it everywhere, and it's great. I'm delighted to see an opening up of things. We talk about ourselves as a new liberal country after repeal, after marriage equality, but we know actually in the arts it's going to start to play out. We're seeing it come true where new sounds are coming in, and I won't hear it. That's not Irish culture. Of course it is, because it's actually part of us now.
Yeah.
You can't turn around to someone and say, oh no, just because you've got a bow on doesn't mean you haven't got a right to say this is part of Irish culture now.
But I mean, you look at the new breed of Irish hip hop, and you see the influences now of the Irish immigrant kids of the boom years, and they are now coming of age in society where hip-hop is more culturally relevant on the macro scale. And in Ireland, there's been that foundation placed maybe since Scary Era days of Irish hip-hop, where that's all come together. And you've seen in recent years with like Rusangano family, one is from Togo, one is from Zimbabwe, I think, and then their beat makers from Clare. Their video for their big single, Lights On, is them doing a guided tour of Limerick and just going through all the pubs, etc. And they fully invested, they identify as Irish, they've been fully invested in the Irish culture. And, obviously, they've been embraced by Ireland in turn, and, obviously, they've won the Choice Music Prize and all of this. Who lives here belongs here. And, again, we talk about, I sit on the board of I sit on this culture subcommittee for the city of Sanctuary. Cork is one of the UN sanctuary cities. And we're looking at making music and arts accessible to people in direct provision in Cork City, and just listening to the experiences that are coming through and just seeing how people have been embraced, it makes you realise just how much of a fringe those noisy online elements of cultural protectionism and ethno-nationalism are.
The ethno-national undercurrent, it's there. It's not even hidden. It's in plain view. We only saw the good old councillor from Dublin South. Brian was on his tirade already this week, talking, saying gender quotas are just the start. And we don't have to scratch the surface. And I often go into the moral licensing argument where they talked about where they did a large piece of, and I know the whole film, what was Get Out, the movie that was born out of that I voted for Obama, so I'm not a racist. That's where it was born from. Yeah. But there was the study showed that people who said, listen, I do something good to give myself license to do something bad, and there is an element to that where it comes to we do like to pat ourselves on the back as a species, not as an Irish, because we often think we're Irish or unique. We're not that unique.
No, we're not.
And I actually
let's go as far as Poland.
Listen, that's the truth be told, I'm an open borders maniac, so I think if a corporation can move country to country to do whatever it wants to do,
why shouldn't people?
Why can't people? I find it. But as you said, if you live here, you get treated as a human being. Like, it's basic human rights, and I think
it's basic good form.
Yeah.
I've seen that councillor's tweets too, to be honest, and I just look at him go, Councillor Streisand, really, more than anything else. I mean, sure, that kind of dog whistling and such gets you a certain demographic. But by that same token, is that not cutting off your nose to spite your face? Like, people are going to see it, are more visible, but that's going to bite you on the rear end, upcoming elections or whatever, because you think that because, the Irish working class, he likes, that whole right-wing sector is trying to kind of align itself with populism and the working class. Not thinking that people in 9-to-5 jobs are working with non-nationals the whole time that have taken on the Irish identity, that have embraced Irish culture, that everybody has a story of someone that's come over to try and make a better life for themselves. And I think he kind of underestimates the power of decency in a lot of people that he thinks are going to. I think so too. Be on his side. But I'm a terrible optimist now. I have to tell you, I actually believe in the greater good of people, and I do think that. Well, I do. My only fear is that the divide and conquer thing is an easier way to explain things. It's easier to point at a family of new Irish, or whatever terminology we're going to use for people who make their homes here, second generation, first generation, and say to them,
the reason there's a housing crisis is because of them. Well, we know the cold hard facts that's not true at all. The reason there's a housing crisis is because we have had the government that did nothing for 30 years, and this goes beyond Fine Gael. It goes back to the 80s when we just gave up building social housing. So there's a lot of problems in this country, and it's not immigration is not one of them. It's certainly not.
I'd like to think that Ireland, with the history that we've had in terms of sending people to the four corners of the world, the role that Ireland has had in terms of constructing the modern world, that we have a whole bunch more empathy for people coming through, looking to make lives themselves, looking to settle down, looking to share in the Irish experience. And I think that's what's going to win out in the end.
Yeah, but apart from that, we're in Cork, and Cork itself, the People's Republic of Cork trope, it's not just a trope.
No, it's a real thing. I have a passport and everything. Where's your passport? How did you get in?
I married in. I don't know.
We'll be looking at you for a scapegoat now for the Cork housing crisis.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I brought it down.
Dubliners coming down.
taking our wives.
Oh, damn it!
But yeah, no. I do find that is actually still something that's actually nice about Ireland, that we can have that tribalism without having necessarily let's grab our axes and pitchforks and
it's community, and it's inherent to us as far back as the metal. People row in behind each other, they support each other, they take care of each other.
Yeah,
and I like to think, and we're seeing it around us, that's extending to the people that are coming to Ireland looking for a better life, to where there's a growing awareness of direct division and what's happening to people in direct division, and people are slowly but surely kind of looking to see what they can do what part they can play in trying to just improve the day-to-day lives of people inside of it. Like sitting on the committee for
Sanctuary Cities. That's a fascinating. That's a global.
It is.
It's a global phenomenon, and it's even in the States. It's hurt the likes of President Trump with his executive orders, where you've got certain cities in America say, San Francisco. So we're not going to be subjected to your executive orders.
Yeah.
We're a sanctuary city. Go to hell. And when you think about that in terms of, you can smear populism as a right wing.
Populism is a pejorative I don't understand.
Yeah.
Because that's like saying that elitism has worked.
Yeah. No. I agree, but if you the populism was born out of dispossessed in the 1890s in the US, where you had people paying rent to landlords who also owned the factories that they worked in, and they went, hang on, why are we just one circle continually feeding this guy? And that's where these things are born. It wasn't born out of a right wing strongman and talking about fascism.
But certainly, like, you talk about the narrative that emotion kind of appeals more to people rather than reason. And I think for that reason, the Trump thing happening in the States, it is a tragedy in that you have people that have been, technological progress has left a lot of small towns in America behind. Market change, a market economy has left a lot of small towns and a lot of people behind.
Yeah.
And Trump 100% has appealed to people from the Rust Belt, the Cold Belt, the Bible Belt, etc. And I think that's the greater tragedy of it is that solidarity and working together becomes almost a narrative to be co-opted. Never mind by somebody, but by a president, by who all accounts you'd be shot if you walked into one of his golf courses.
Yeah.
Like, I don't understand it. And again, my opinions are not that of my employers or my project partners.
I know, like, we don't even need to broaden it into that, but it is a tragedy because on the global scale, what we're seeing is isolationism creeping back in a major way, and that would mean, if that sort of, the old expression that if America sneezes, we catch a cold, that is true in all facets, not just economically. It's true also
culturally.
Yeah.
And that accelerated hugely in the television age, where after RT came in and kind of imported programming became du jour maybe past the 1970s, to where you can see its effect on Irish popular culture all the way through to today, where even like the English channels surpassed RTE television as the main means of receiving information in the 1990s, and it had that kind of combination of, you know, a more comprehensive news source and also a luxury item. Like, here's this thing that the well-to-do had, and maybe if you were lucky, somebody taped you The Simpsons or taped you the wrestling. And that's how it was. That it found commodities that, you know, network television couldn't afford, and it made its way to that, and kind of used that as a selling point for kind of.
It's good. I had never looked at it upon like that, because you think about the old Sunday evening. There used to be a 6:30 mass in St. Peter's in Phibsborough, which meant what I'd say to my mum, say, you get mass, and I'd say, I'm going to get 6:30 mass, mum, and I'd go up to my friend's house who had Sky, and we'd watch The Simpsons, and we'd come back and we'd run in and grab one of the envelopes or something from the church, and that's how we got out of ever going to mass.
And there's obviously a good side and a bad side to that, in that the original Simpsons, that is after season or before season 10, like, it was such a culturing influence in Ireland that obviously it looked at it through an American filter. But we were being taught slowly but surely through jokes, through layouts, through morality plays in The Simpsons, and note that The Simpsons always ended on a humane ending with like a reunion or a heartfelt ending or a realization, whereas now it's just like Homer going off a cliff and that's it. We were being cultured in kind of the niceties of international politics, of world culture, of human rights, of international conversations, and liberal conversations too. You know, we didn't necessarily get that, and it's especially surprising, like, seeing what Fox has turned into now.
Oh God!
Yeah, that you seem to obviously now, like.
I heard someone recently. I can't remember which commentator it was. I think it was one of an American commentator who's appeared on Matt Cooper's Last Word a couple of times, who said that the problem is that no one is that the media is so left wing in America. And totally negating the fact that Fox News is the most watched news station in the world. You know, we can actually say that they're niche, but they're not.
They're appealing to emotion, and that serotonin boost, like you read about it in so many kind of studies and so many articles, etc. People talking about their dads being radicalized because, first of all, they throw on these conservative talk shows for hate listening, and then that serotonin rush of hearing somebody getting angry, you know, becomes more and more addictive. Where, you know, you have someone like Alex Jones who specialises in theatrical outrage and calling people witches and demons and all this other stuff.
Yeah, or we're not unique to that here. We're trying to get more and more into that sort of, whereby, you know, we have. I'd say if I was cynical enough, I'd cast it all aside and say, you know what we'll do? We'll set up an Irish InfoWars, because I reckon you'd find an audience pretty quickly. And I reckon you could turn it into
a counter InfoWars or satirical humour, in that you're kind of.
Oh, listen, I'm a great believer in the power of satire. Even though you know, I know there's a paradox there, but I do think, you know, we spoke to Oliver Callan. I saw. Did you see? You know, obviously Michael Fry. Big Dirty Fry. And
Michael Radio. Shout out to Big Dirty Fry.
Oh, what a man. He had the Kid Talk the other day. It was his latest one.
I didn't see that one, though.
Oh, it's well worth a listen or a watch. It's basically BBC Ulster, Stephen Nolan talking to children.
Oh, Wild Chat.
Yeah. So he goes on that. He goes on one of those. But people, the power of that now, that platform, just via social media, can make an impact, and we are lucky insofar as, yes, there are huge problems in terms of real. If we're honest, there is a racism problem, but it's not. It is not mainstream insofar as it hasn't got a big audience. But if you wanted to give it one, I'm sure you could find willing listeners.
I mean, there's an inherent goodness to people. People are inherently good, not just the Irish aren't inherently good. You can talk about people being shaped by their circumstances, and that for a minute doesn't excuse people from holding, you know, from holding those views, etc. But you just hope that people, that inherently that vocal kind of minority gets drowned out by people showing solidarity for people, and that ultimately doesn't get seen.
Back to you though. So in the next few years, you're writing, you're breaking. What's the dream? Would you like to find someone, break a band, help get someone?
I mean, like, I suppose there never really was a plan to begin with. How I got into music journalism was I was going to be a journalist when I grew up, and then I had an experience as a teenager that soured me on journalism, just seeing kind of paparazzi journalism in action.
You didn't meet Pat Leahy, no?
I did not meet Pat Leahy, no.
No apologies, Pat. Come on.
But long story short, okay, my plan A is out the window, and I'm doing my Leaving Cert next year. Then certain other things happen, and then I did TY, so all my friends are after leaving school. So after breaking my ankle, I tried doing my Leaving Cert on the kind of on the aftermath of pain meds, etc. And wound up having to kind of seek out other options for myself. So I went into a sound engineering course in Mallow College for further education. And from there, I got into promoting shows, and I got into the kind of the production end of music. The original plan was to start a punk band, because again, the recession was on its unfolding, and we were really seeing the short end of that stick. But at the time, I wasn't in a really good space to be doing anything, really. I couldn't find anyone to jam with, so eventually just got into running shows at various venues around the place, and then got into blogging via the platforms that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
And I suppose the plan from there was like, okay, let's see what opportunities arise, because at the time new media was developing. You know, people were saying, oh look, you know, blogging is dead. Micro-blogging, as social media was referred to back then, was emerging. It was like, okay, let's see how it goes, and it went from AU to One More Robot, and eventually I managed to blag my way into the Evening Echo. And that was the kind of the first sign that, okay, there's something sustainable here, in that if you tailor your message, not tailoring your message to a platform, rather if you get a grip on the storytelling more of different platforms, you know, you can tell the story that you want to as soon as you know what the language is, what the verbiage is. And I was kind of thrown into deep water for the Evening Echo on my first assignment. And I had been sending kind of bail-hooked emails for ages. Give me work, I'm young and I'm cool and I can talk about music.
I can grow a beard.
Yeah. And eventually they called my bluff and goes, right, we're sticking you a Blind Boy Boat Club.
Oh, right.
So it's like, alright, you've called my bluff here, lads. Yeah. So like on the phone to Blind Boy Boat Club, and he gives me 20 minutes of like amazing material.
Yeah.
And he really didn't have to. So thank you, Blind Boy, if you're listening. Just all the stuff about Beyonce and Ice Cube, just the stuff that you've heard on the podcast before. Yeah. And, you know, I was lucky enough that I got hired for more regular stuff off the back of that interview. So, like, slowly learning the different terms of storytelling for different places, whereas with Village, you know, there's a socio-political angle that you have to take. Yeah. Whereas in the last couple of months we've had, you know, Spook of the 13th Lock and their concept album about the 1913 strike and lockout. Or Baylor having come back from a tour of Russia, dealing with Russian nettlers that are anti-Putin. And just kind of talking about, lads, we're not all scary, we're not all looking to each us alive. Please tell metal fans in Ireland and in the UK that Russian metal fans are with you. Yeah. So there's all of these kind of social angles that you can take in order to platform and to get fans to different audiences, which is the most important thing, you know, aside from
that's
writing and doing everything else. It's one of those things that you just kind of just get the knack for as you go along. I started I started Cork Love Music. Or I didn't, rather. I started with TEDx Cork Salon off of knowing one of the people that was involved in the team. And I hopped on from like the second event and we did Cork Loves Music, TEDx Cork Loves Music. Yeah. And that succeeded to where, okay, we can run a couple of these separate once the TEDx license runs out. And we rang First Music Contact up in Dublin, Angela Dorgan, who is, I always say it, she's the fairy godmother of Irish music. Okay. She's just one of those people that just makes things happen for Irish musicians. They'll come to her. Once the artist figures out what they want to do, she's the person that kind of takes a look and goes, okay, this is who you need to talk to, this, and this. And Irish music has been so much better for her presence and assisting people to where, even last month, she helped get, even in the last couple of months even, she helped get, you know, she was a big part in Talos getting signed to BMG, and, you know, Bitch Falcon, the grunge band, have given her massive credit for helping get signed to a very good booking and touring deal. So I mean, just kind of, I suppose.
But if you were talking about people who are giving a start to others, I mean, it's also what you're doing as well. And maybe not what you're crediting yourself with, but you're there giving those platforms, giving those voices.
Well, I mean, people are doing things, and if I was on that same boat, I'd want someone to help me too.
Yeah.
And I know that there's a lot of scope now in that, as much as we talk about, there's gatekeepers and all people going on pop, but a lot of people's listening palettes are a whole lot broader than they were. And there's a generation now of younger artists that are 16 to 21 years of age that are growing up in a post-CD, post-magazine society where everything has been available at the point of access immediately. So you've got bands like, here in Cork now, we've got a band called God Alone. They're all 17 to 19 years of age. They're gigging weekly. They are absolutely slogging it. And then they have 3 or 4 other bands that they're all in, and they're just going at it wholesale. And they grew up listening to black metal, but they also grew up listening to hip-hop, and they also grew up listening to, Brian Eno and all of this stuff. But also, being from Cork, they listen to Rory Gallagher and they listen to the Sultans. So they have all of this rich history that they can just access at the touch of a button or with a smartphone. And that's informing a whole lot more kind of eclectic output that kind of in turn can be put out to a lot broader audiences, whether that's via your newspapers or via online outlets, etc. That with the right kind of angle for an audience can be put out, and I think that's the most important thing. And again, when you talk about putting others on, I think that's almost kind of a duty now for Irish music journalists, considering that a new generation kind of needs all of the help and exposure that it can get.
Yeah.
And it's only kind of sitting in with Angela and other people and kind of being inspired by how she helps others and how she understands the implicit need for support for Irish artists. That everybody along that chain, from DIY gig promoters, which I was for a long time, to older musicians, to media, has in kind of making that path upwards as friendly as possible, in that it's going to be rough for anybody regardless. But kind of having that familiar face is something that you want yourself.
I think that's a great place to wrap it up, because you've just summed it up. We all get along, we bring along. Okay?
Everybody, in order to, let me see how I can phrase this now, because I had something in mind, I just have to go. If you're in a position of influence, no matter how small it is, that could make a difference to somebody else that you don't know about. If we all elevate each other and do the best that we can, there's nothing more that we can ask. And I think it's going to, I think the world will be a whole lot better for all of us. Doing the everyday of balancing, the struggle and working with what you want to do in your life and the dreams and ambitions that you have for yourself. All of that's easier if we all just get along and collaborate and help each other up.
I think it's a great place to leave it, because you've just touched on it. Once we collaborate for success rather than one another down, and that's even as a Dublin man speaking to a Cork man.
Yes, as a Cork man, it's very good to elevate you and bring you down to your nation's capital. And
listen, if it's the capital you want, you can have it, mate. It ain't worth any of that. So, listen, Mike, thanks so much. Really enjoyed that.
Thank you for having me on. It's wonderful to finally be on. And I can't thank you enough for
not at all,
what Echo Chambers is doing to help solidify a diversity of voices in Irish media at the time where, for various factors, that maybe isn't the easiest thing to do.
Thanks very much. And listen, folks, again, thanks for listening. Hit subscribe, tell your friends. Do leave us a review, and if you want to send me an email at theechochamberpod@gmail.com or hit me up on Twitter @echochamberspod. Thanks for listening. Take care. Bye-bye.